This week, we finally get back into building. I'm so excited to show you what we have done. If you haven't realized yet, I started taking videos to put on YouTube 3 years ago, but didn't have time until now to get it started. When I finally get the videos caught up to real time, I'll let you know. It might be a while. We bought an EcoFlow Delta Pro for temporary power right before we moved out here. It kept everything we needed powered, but I did buy an extra panel to help charge it quicker. I built a temporary array to attach it to. Now that we have our permanent solar, we are using it in the barn to power our extra freezer until we have the barn hooked up to our solar. In October, Josh helped us install a small wood stove we bought from Flame Innovations. It's called the Caboose. It was so nice to finally get heat in the cabin. It has heated us well through the 2 winters we have lived here. The fan that Isaac, our 3rd son, gave us works really well. More work on the foundations. Our lumber yard. All this wood for the barn and part of the house. Tim, Josh, and Luke's son Lane are pouring the footings for the foundation of the barn. Lane came out to help pour the foundation at 6 a.m. He sure is a great kid. Tim used 2x12s to form the foundation walls and to make them look old. Then Luke and Josh poured them while we watched. It was so nice to have help. Tim decided to hire out the concrete work on the floor of the barn and the house foundations, since his back and knees gave out doing the barn foundation. Look how beautiful this looks. We put rock and gravel on the garage floor with the skid steer, and while backing up damaged the back wall. Tim had to fix it by tearing out all the damaged materials, drilling and gluing in rebar to bond the new and old concrete, and install a band-aid of 2x12s to match the existing finish of the foundation. Then he hand mixed and poured concrete into the forms and used his Sawzall without a blade to vibrate the air pockets out. After the 2x12s were removed, we had a 12-foot wide smile on the back wall. I told Tim we have a beautiful smile on the back of our barn. He said he's glad it's going to be covered by a stairway. While the skid steer was still here, Tim had him level out the house site. They're pouring the barn floor. It sure is nice Tim doesn't have to do it. They're lifting the rebar so the cement goes underneath, so that the rebar will be in the middle of the cement.
The back third of the floor of the barn, I guess we'll call it, is finished flat in the office, mechanical room, and stairway, as we have the frame walls for the rooms that will support the upper level. The other 2/3 of the building has a 1-inch slope to the front of the garage for water runoff from cars or whatever else gets it wet. I just don't have the tools or the knees to do a slab anymore. I dug extra holes prior to the pour for the 2 posts that will hold up the center beam. The concrete stem wall above the slab will finish out at about 2 feet of wall, so I am framing the outside walls using 8-foot studs to give me a finished floor to ceiling of about 10 foot. I am framing the interior walls with 10-foot studs cut down to fit. I'm framing out for 3 windows, one in the garage area, one in my office, and one in the stairway landing area. I also have 2 man doors, one on the north side and one on the south wall. The one on the south will be opposite the laundry room of the house. There are also 2 9-foot wide by 8-foot tall garage doors on the east end. The upper level will be a large 20 by 40 room to hopefully be used for my model train HO layout. All of my train stuff has been in boxes for years. I started collecting when I was in high school and just never had a room to set up everything. I'm looking forward to that. The lower level is 30 foot by 40 foot, by the way. I don't know if anyone has noticed our dirt while you're watching the videos. It's around 9 inches deep of what they call daube, D-O-B-E. It looks like dirt, but is actually dried mud and is dusty and cracked until the rainy season, and then it turns to slime. And as you walk around the building, you get taller. It's fun. Below this is a mile of fractured basalt. Very hard to dig through or to make level. I don't really know if it's a mile thick, but that's what I think. We are using The Wise Man Builds His House Upon the Rock as our theme.
Tim had them order extra cement so he could do the floor of the pump house. He prepared the forms with 2x4s and then threw gravel against it to hold back the cement. He made thickened edges instead of footings. The floor was 4 inches deep. He also included rebar. The box you see is the framework to keep the pipes from freezing. They are 3 feet deep. One goes to the cabin and one comes from the pump. That kept him busy while they were power troweling the barn floor. Colossians 3:23 through 24 says, "And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ." I will show you the building of the pump house in another video. But it did happen during the framing of the barn. He was a very busy man during that time. I love my hardworking man. Tim used some extra cement to put in the holes that he dug for the solar array, which is coming up in another video. After the barn floor was cured, they covered it with plywood to protect the floor while building the walls. They had to lift the end of the 2x4 wall up onto the foundation wall, and then they used wall jacks to jack the wall up. They did use ladders when it got too tall to reach. That made me feel more comfortable. The first wall is up. Praise God. Once they figured out the jacks, the walls went up pretty quickly. He's putting up the rim joists now. Tim is using LVLs for the support of the 2x12 ceiling joists. I had to square the ends of each beam. He used 4 16-foot beams and laminated 2 together each to make 2 16-foot by 3.5-inch beams. We used 16-foot 2x12s for the ceiling joists. Boy, were they heavy. I cut 26 2x12s, 14 inches long, for blocking for each side of the beam. That was 52 blocks. It was fun to be able to help too. Josh and his old pastor and friend came over and put the first row of plywood down on the upstairs floor of the barn. They had a line snapped to make sure the plywood was straight all along the floor. Then they stalked the plywood so that Tim wouldn't have to move it so far. He really can't go up and down a ladder much. Tim wanted the tongue to go towards the outside, so Josh had to turn the board around. Brett had to jump onto the floor to make sure that the plywood was lining up with the line. When it was all lined up, Josh then nailed down the plywood. It took Tim 2 days to glue and nail the plywood down after the guys got it stocked. The pony walls of the roof will be inset 5 feet on each side, but this will still be a huge area for Tim's trains. Tim framed in 2 9-foot by 8-foot doors for the garage. He also framed in 3 windows and 2 man doors. Tim wrapped the whole barn with house wrap and then sided it. Then, since the plywood was all down on the floor upstairs, we decided to stop on the barn and get started on the house before the snows came. We put a tarp over the whole top of the barn to keep the water out, but that didn't help. So now we have another story to tell you in an upcoming video. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.